Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori, and today I wanted to do a video on the difference between the ego and the higher self, how they were designed, why they were designed, how they work in 3D, how they work in 5D. So the ego is a structure that was designed millions of years ago when the human form was designed, okay? And it was designed in a 5D consciousness because the human form was designed in a 5D consciousness because the earth was designed in 5D consciousness originally, right? And the egoic structure is a consciousness. It's an energetic consciousness that was designed in the 5D so that it could keep the human form physically safe, right? So the ego would provide the 5D human information and knowledge about what is safe physically and not safe, right? So the structure will say, don't jump off that cliff, right? That's unsafe. You will die, right? Or that hot fire will burn your hand, right? So you touch it and ow, I'm not going to do that again. The egoic structure is sort of the navigator of safety for the physical form. And that's why it was designed. It was designed to keep that human form safe physically. The higher self is an aspect of your light consciousness that dropped into human form. But it's, of course, vibrating in a lower consciousness than the light consciousness that you are that dropped in. Okay, but it is vibrating higher than the 5D consciousness that you were when you dropped in. Or, for instance, now, the 3D consciousness. So you have a 3D consciousness, which is your form, your ego and personality now. You have the higher self, which is a higher consciousness than the 3D. And then you have the light consciousness that you are in whatever dimension you were when you dropped in. Okay? Now let's go back to the 5D. If and when you dropped into the 5D human form in the 5D consciousness, right? You were a high consciousness frequency. You dropped in, stepped into the etheric body, and then an aspect of you moved into a lower frequency, which was the higher self, but a higher frequency than 5D. Okay, that's the higher self. The higher self is designed to navigate the 5D human through their experience on the earth plane. So it keeps them connected to what they're doing on this earth plane, in this 5D field. What am I doing here, right? Because when you drop in as a higher consciousness, you're dropping into a reality and a density that you're not familiar with, right? And you don't typically experience yourself as. So you need a navigation tool, a navigator, to move you through this density, which is 5D. Now we think 3D is dense, right? And 5D is much higher, and that's true. However, from a higher consciousness, let's say 13th dimensional field, 5D is very dense. 5D is a very dense field, okay? And so you needed to be able to navigate it. Keep you connected to what you're doing, which means it keeps you connected to the consciousness you came from. It reminds you that you're volunteering. It reminds you that you're in a 5D form. It reminds you of how you are designed to do this, right? Everything that in 3D we forget because it is so dense. When you are in 3D, the lights are out. You can barely connect to the higher self, right? And so that's why you forget everything because of how dense the consciousness is. Wherein in 5D, right, the consciousness is not as dense, and so you are able to connect to the higher self, which is your access point, your navigator. It's the aspect of you that reminds you of everything. So you're not in the dark. You don't have amnesia. You don't forget, right? It's beautiful. And then, of course, you have the egoic structure that keeps you safe. So you're always hearing higher self. There's no such thing as who's my higher self. There's no such thing as what does my higher self sound like. You instantly connect to higher self when you drop into the 5D form because you instantly connect to your channel. And when you connect to your channel, you're in alignment. That's alignment. I'm aligned. When you're aligned, you're in the channel, You're open to everything. You're connected to all of it, all of the multidimensionality of you, the quantum field, everything. So in 5D, in the 5D consciousness and 5D field, which means that in the fifth dimension, anchored in a 5D form, you have access to everything. That's why the Earth chose 5D, because it was dense enough to still be able to hold density of form, but yet it is high enough in density where you can stay connected and aligned to what you're doing down in the human form. Okay? So you're always connected. Now let's talk about 3D, which is where we all are now. When the human form, when Earth shifted down into 3D, okay, which took millions of years, there was a redesign of the human form and a redesign of the egoic structure. And what happened was, because the human form was now holding a much denser consciousness, the egoic structure was holding a much denser consciousness, which was still safe, keeping the human safe. However, because the human is now experiencing a multitude of consciousnesses, a variety on the spectrum of duality now, right? Because when you enter into 3D consciousness, there is duality, which means that there is good and bad, right and wrong. There is love and hate. There is murder and there is birth, right? There's trauma and there's joy. There's all kinds of stuff experienced in every now. So the ego structure in 3D was designed, it wasn't designed, it became the aspect of the human that kept the human safe in that field of consciousness, not just physically. And so what does that mean? It means that when the human starts to engage in 3D consciousness through experiences, events, people, places, whatever it may be, from the moment it becomes a little baby form, the ego will say, don't do that, don't feel that, don't experience that, move out of your body as that comes in. Separate yourself from that person. You're not safe to do that. You don't have the ability to go there, right? The ego is constantly navigating you. It's telling you yes, no, right, wrong, do this, don't do that. Don't forget last time you did this, this happened. It's designed to keep you safe in this consciousness. And it has done a very good job for most of us, right? We have felt safe. We've felt in control. We have felt like we understand how to navigate this 3D consciousness quite well, right? We have a lot to thank our ego for. Now, however, we are shifting into higher states of consciousness, which means that we are starting to remember that we have a higher self. And then we start to say, oh shit, I'm supposed to be listening to this other aspect of me. Oh my God, what does that mean? And how do I do it, right? And so begins the unraveling of starting to navigate your reality through the higher self. And that's what many of us are doing now. In the 3D, you are always connected to higher self, because your channel is always on, whether you are connected to the channel or not, meaning you are in the channel, you're breathing in there, you're feeling it, or you're not. The higher self is always funneling energetically through that channel 24/7. So you always have access to higher self. There's no such thing as I can't access higher self. No such thing. I'm shut off from higher self. No such thing. It doesn't exist. It's not energetically possible. It's a matter of you reconnecting to the channel within you that holds the higher self-consciousness. And that's what we're learning how to do. So one of the ways in which we are experiencing higher self and ego is in the mind. The mind is the chatter, right? And so the ego is always being experienced in the mind. It's talking, 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 and so is the higher self. The higher self will also talk, but it'll be much more subtle. It's like a whisper in the beginning. Why? Because it's at a higher consciousness. It's It's at a higher vibration, and so it's harder to hear it in the beginning. You're trying to familiarize yourself with that voice, with that sound, okay? And so the ego, we're so used to it, from the moment we dropped into this little form, boom, the ego turns on and let's go. And the ego is going all day long, 24/7. Now we're starting to expand and open ourselves into higher states of consciousness, which means that we're starting to access, hear, feel, and experience this other part of us that's funneling through us at all times, that's vibrating into higher consciousness, which means we have to start to learn how to hear it. Okay? So when it funnels in, the first way that we start to kind of experience higher self is either through the mind, which is talking, like we can hear it, and it sounds like you, just like the ego sounds like you, right? The ego doesn't have a different random voice. It doesn't sound like a man talking to you. It sounds like you. Same with higher self. Higher self sounds like you, okay? So when you want to start to pay attention to what you're hearing in your head, that's where higher self is, and it's subtle. The other way that higher self communicates is through the intuitive guttural instinct, the intuitive hits, the intuitive knowingnesses, right, that we feel within the gut. The reason you feel it in there is because it's in the channel, and it's coming out of one of the energy centers. So you may feel higher self more in the fourth energy center, or maybe in the third, in the solar plexus. Maybe you really feel that guttural, intuitive, instinctual feeling in the sacral or in the root. I don't know, right? You will know as you start to navigate into the channel by finding breath. Where's my breath? In every now moment, and that means I'm in my body and in my channel. That means I can feel. Not the you're not feeling emotion, you're feeling the energy. You're feeling that energetic frequency, which is the higher self. Right? And so you want to keep the crown open as much as you can, as wide as you can, so you have easier access for more of the frequency of the higher self to come in. Right? You want to keep it wide open. It's like having the door wide open or just slightly open, right? The wider it's open, the more that's going to be able to come through. So you want as much of that frequency to flood in you so that you have the ability to hear it more. So you have to remember in every now, you're not shut off. What stories are you telling yourself? I'm telling myself that I can't hear. Okay, well then you're not going to hear. I'm telling myself that I'm shut off from higher self. Okay, then you're shut off from higher self. I'm telling myself that I have challenges doing it. Okay, then you're going to have challenges. Switch the story you tell yourself first and foremost. Switch that story. Flip the script. You are an energetic being experiencing yourself in a 3D form that is designed with a channel that always has access to higher self. Always. Higher self is always talking to me. Higher self is always, first of all, that's true, but you're flipping the script of what you're telling yourself. You guys, you're not able to hear higher self. You're learning how to again. You're remembering it. You're remembering it again. You are in the same form that you were in 5D. It's just now in a denser consciousness. There is nothing different than the form you're in right now than the form that was in a 5D consciousness, in a 5D field, other than you are now being held in a denser consciousness. So it's more challenging to connect and access the channel that is innately in you, that was innately in you in 5D. It's the same channel. It's the exact same channel. The higher self is funneling in the exact same way in 3D as it did in 5D. There's nothing different. Nothing. You don't need any different tools. You don't need any different skills. It's how the human form was designed. So now what you're doing is you're flipping the script on what you're telling yourself. And then you're having compassion for the fact that you're having to remember what the heck the higher self sounds like. So in every now moment, how conscious can you get of what you're hearing and what you're intuitively feeling or resonating with? What are the guttural kind of guided feelings you're having? Go do this. Okay, I'm going to go do this. Stop saying that. Okay, I'm going to stop saying that. Go and do this. Okay, end this. Okay, I'm going to end this. Step into this. Okay, I'm going to step into that, right? So Here's how you want to start to really compartmentalize these two aspects of you, the ego and the higher self. I've said this so many times and I'll say it again. The ego is held in judgment and duality. So that's the simplest way to put it. When you hear something in your head, is it connected to judgment and duality? Is there a right or wrong? Is it fear-based? Is it have some sort of attachment to it, judgment to it, criticism to it? It's ego. Okay? If it's neutral, it's just saying something to you, it's just telling you something, it's just asking you something. The higher self is direct. It doesn't say a lot, it's specific. It's just like a sentence or two, boom. And it will keep doing it. Keep doing it. You'll hear it over and over and over until you follow it. So it's the nudge that won't stop. It's the push that won't stop. It's the annoying little thing that won't go away. That's higher self. Higher self. It's an energy. That's all it is. Higher self consciousness coming in. It's an aspect of you that's designed to navigate you in the higher realms, which, what a gift. You're now tapping into and stepping into higher realms of consciousness. So you're now tapping into higher self. What a freaking amazing gift, right? How beautiful is this? So you're learning how to navigate into and connect to this higher aspect of you, which has been designed to navigate you as you move into the 5D field. The ego is never going anywhere. The ego is in 5D. Guess what? The ego's coming with you. Okay, so you never get rid of that structure. It's designed in the human form. Always. What happens is, as you navigate into higher fields of consciousness, the egoic structure starts to shift and change its way in which it's navigating you. So it becomes not the number one navigator. The higher self starts to become the number one navigator. And the ego starts to quiet. And then it quiets more. And then it quiets more. And it only appears loudly when you're in physical danger. However, as you're navigating from the 3D field into the 4D field and into the 5D field, what you're going to notice is there's this back and forth. In 3D field, there's this back and forth like this. Higher self starts to talk. Ego's super loud. Higher self, ego, higher self, ego, higher self, ego. Which one, which one, which one, which one? As you start to go into the 4D field, the higher self starts to get a little bit louder. The ego starts to quiet, right? And then you start navigating with the higher self more and more and more. And then when you're in 5D, it's a complete aligned state with navigating through the higher self. And the ego is just sitting here as one aspect of you that just kind of pops up when you're in danger physically. That's it. Just keeps you safe. It's not loud. It's not always speaking to you, right? So there's this slow shift that ends up happening as you start navigating to higher states of consciousness. Okay? So if you are like this right now, back and forth in the 3D field, that's okay. You're learning. You're just learning how to navigate these two aspects of you. As you begin to shift and anchor into a 4D consciousness and a 4D field, you'll start to recognize the higher self guiding you more and more. And you'll learn what that feels like. When you are being guided by higher self, you are stepping into things that make no sense. You are doing things that are out of the quote unquote normal paradigms in 3D. Why would you do that, Lori? That makes no sense. Nobody does that, Lori. You're supposed to have these plans and these, there's these structured ways of being in 3D that are designed and that the ego follows. Higher self doesn't follow paradigms like that. Higher self doesn't have a platform or a book that it gives you and says, here's the steps, here's how you do it. Higher self is in flow state and it just moves in every now. Okay? And it understands that it's an infinite quantum field, so anything is possible in any next now. So there's never step by step, right? The ego has a controlled mechanism that creates steps. Higher self doesn't create steps. It just is. Go do this. Go do that. Go do that. So you have to get used to the fact that you're not going to be in control. Right? You being the egoic structure and the personality is going to no longer feel like they're in control because the higher self is guiding you now. And when the higher self guides, it feels as if you're no longer in control. It's just a mirage, right? There is no control when you start moving into higher states of consciousness. There is just flow, which means that you're safe just being. You're just starting to be. But what it feels like, you guys, when you start to follow the guidance of higher self is that you're letting go of control, right? And that you are surrendering to what you are being asked to do. Whatever it is that the higher self is asking you to, it's always moving you into the next highest version of you. The higher self's role not only is to navigate you through these higher consciousnesses, but it is guiding you into the next highest version of you, which is, what is your divine blueprint? What are you here to do? What is for your highest good? What is going to bring you into the next highest state of consciousness? That is what the higher self's role is. And when you follow it, it will typically, a lot of times, not follow the rules, paradigms, and ways of being in 3D. So people are going to look at you, around you, and say, oh my God, why are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to do it like this, this, this. But you're being guided to do it this way. And so there's this dichotomy that's happening, this dissonance that's happening. The dissonance is, I'm supposed to be doing it this way. This is the right way to do it. And yet my internal gauge, my radar, my guide is saying, do it this way. And there's this fight in the beginning, this learning how to be navigated by higher self in a field of consciousness which has taught us how to be. And the higher self doesn't live in that. The higher self doesn't exist in that. So of course it's not going to be regulated by these consciousnesses. It's going to be regulated by higher states of consciousness, which is what you're stepping into, which is what you're learning how to be in, right? And so it's crunchy, it's uncomfortable, it's nerve-wracking, you're frightened, you're scared, like, oh my God, is this, how can I trust this? You have to just start to do it. You have to just start jumping. You have to just start surrendering. You have to start trusting. It's not necessarily always going to feel comfortable or safe because you are navigating out of a very comfortable, safe consciousness into higher states of consciousness, which require surrender. It requires flow. Flow state is present moment state. Present moment state is no control, no rules, no plan of action. Right? And so you have to be gentle with yourselves, you guys. It's not black and white. It's not like, oh, well, if I follow higher self, that means I can't make any plans. No, I can't plan out how I'm going to move. No, navigate this in a realistic way, meaning, listen, if you're being guided to move out of a house into a different place, like go across the country or switch jobs, right? Navigate it in a way that is comfortable for you until you're capable of being able to navigate it 100% in higher self. Meaning you may have to navigate it with both the ego and the higher self for a little bit. That's okay. You may have to make some plans. You may have to figure out how this is going to work for you, right? You may have to wait until you've got the savings. It's okay. However you need to navigate it is okay. There's no such thing as the right way or the wrong way. There is no such thing as black and white. Like you're either following the ego or you're following the higher self. Please, that's ridiculous. You're doing this always. So you don't do this, right? You're always learning with the ego and the higher self together how to navigate both until eventually you are completely anchored in and being navigated by higher self only. So give yourself permission to learn how to do this. Make mistakes. Figure it out. Follow what you think is the higher self, and then you realize, oh, maybe that wasn't my higher self. Maybe that was my ego. Okay, well, let me do this again. Who cares? Just practice. You know, a year and a half ago, I was living in Mount Shasta, and I was absolutely 100% guided by higher self to move to Bend, Oregon. So I packed up my stuff, got a U-Haul, got a trailer to put my 4Runner on, moved up to Bend, Oregon, moved out of this place I didn't like that I was living in Shasta, and got to Bend, Oregon. And 2 weeks later, I was like, oh, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I battled. Was that my higher self? Was that my ego? Why would my higher self tell me to get here? Why would my higher self tell me to move? Why would I spend all this money? And by the way, this just happened 3 weeks ago as well. Okay. So it's not a matter of trying to figure out, was that ego or higher self? Why is this happening to me? What's the why? The why. We always want the why. Let go of the why. The why is the ego trying to control. Forget the why. Everything is happening for your highest good. How about that? How about you just stick with the knowingness that everything's happening for your highest good? So here I am in Bend, Oregon, and all I want to do is get back to Shasta. That's it. And so I pack up again, get the U-Haul, get the trailer, put the 4Runner on it, and back I go to Shasta with nowhere to live. 4 days later, I've got this amazing house, this amazing yard. I'm so grateful to be back in Shasta. Everything shifts, and my entire service work is exponentially expanded as soon as I come back. So I didn't focus necessarily on, oh my God, did I make the right choice? Why did I do that? Was that my higher self? First of all, it was absolutely my higher self, okay? And it was doing this so that I could get out of the energetic space I was in the apartment I was living in, and so that I could recognize and shift into an expanded version of me in this house, right? And I couldn't do it apparently from just the apartment into the house, right? For whatever reason. But while I was going through this, I had no idea why this was happening. I had no idea that I would find a house. I had no idea when I found the house what would happen to my job, my career, my service work, right? I didn't know any of that. But I didn't focus on that. I wasn't battling between, is this ego or is this higher self? How do I know which one? I just followed the intuitive feeling of what felt good. What feels good? Not what feels right, what I should do. Because many people may say to you, well, you should just wait it out. It's going to get better in Bend, Oregon. Just wait it out. That didn't feel good to me, right? My resonance, my intuitive hit, my higher self was like, get out. Don't follow the rules. Don't follow what everyone else would or should do. Should is ego. You should do this. That's ego. You need to do this. That's ego, right? What I wanted to do, what I was feeling intuitively, what felt good to me, expanded to me, was to get the heck out of there and go back to Shasta, regardless of what it looked like to anyone else. And I just went through it again 3 weeks ago. I moved twice in 10 days. Most people would have been like, you're nuts, just stay where you are. No. And I didn't ask, is this ego or higher self? I knew it was my higher self. And I didn't ask why. I just trusted. I just flowed. I just trusted, and I did what felt good to me, what felt like I needed to do, meaning resonance-wise, I don't know why, but I needed to move out of that first place, and I needed to get myself here. Right? And I still don't know necessarily the why behind it, and it doesn't matter. A lot of times we get stuck in the why. Let the why go. Okay? A lot of times we get stuck in being like, I don't know if this is my ego or my higher self. Forget about that as well. What feels good? Okay? Now, when higher self asks you to do something, it's not always going to feel safe, meaning it's going to be frightening, perhaps, or scary, or uncomfortable, but that's different than not feeling good. That doesn't feel good to do. It just doesn't feel right, you know? You want to start to learn what feels right or good. And not right meaning right and wrong. Right meaning like, that feels good to me. Yeah, this is what feels good. Does it make sense? No. People can think I'm crazy. Sure. Do I give a shit? No. I'm following higher self guidance. I'm moving into higher states of consciousness. This is what it means. People that are not necessarily consciously ascending may look at you like you've lost your mind. That's okay. Who cares? Right? You're the you're the light worker and the way shower, and you're showing the way. You're moving. You're going. You are on the front lines. You're showing them how to do it so that they can open up to it much easier and gracefully and follow your footsteps. That's why you're on the earth plane. Remember? You're a light worker and a way shower, and you're showing the way. This is how you do it. And it's scary as hell, and because there's nobody in front of you showing you how to do it, which is why you're here, so that you can do it, so that those millions of humans behind you that are eventually going to wake up will be able to watch what you did and say, oh, so-and-so did that. I remember when so-and-so started doing those really strange, crazy things in their life. Now I'm being asked to do it. I'm going to do it because I watched them do it. Right? That's why you're on the earth plane. Many reasons why you're on the earth plane. That's one of them. Stepping into higher states of consciousness, being in higher states of consciousness, doing higher state of consciousness, right? So when you start following the higher self more and more and more, it is going to look not like anything you've done in the past. It's not necessarily going to make sense. Be comfortable with that. Start to get comfortable with that, right? Start to watch how the ego is going to try to keep you in the right way of doing things, okay? But you also want to be comfortable as you're navigating this. Meaning, if you're feeling like you want to quit your job, okay, but you don't necessarily have the savings yet, you don't necessarily know what you're going to step into, don't just quit your job willy-nilly and then be, without a job, without money, if that's going to be very uncomfortable for you. If you're going to freeze, if you're going to be in stress, there's no reason to do that to yourself, right? Just because you want to prove that you're living in higher states of consciousness. Well, my higher self said to do it, so I'm just going to do it. You're still in a 3D field of consciousness. You still have to navigate this 3D field, right? You don't want to be homeless unless you really want to be homeless, then go be homeless, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's an extremely freeing feeling, and that's what feels good to you. That's what feels right to you, right? But if taking that leap without having something else there yet doesn't feel good, don't do it. Okay, so again, this is really a fine line. It's your fine line. You're navigating this. Nobody else in your entire world is navigating this but you. So you have to listen to what feels good to you. So the higher self is going to continue to guide you and say, it's time to jump, it's time to jump, it's time to jump. But the 3D dense physical aspect of you needs to also be able to comfortably sort of say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm ready, right? I can do this. I can do this. What do you need to be ready, right? It's okay to navigate that. If you remember that no matter what, every single thing you're doing is always moving you into the next highest version of you. That's the role of the higher self. And you're still a 3D consciousness, meaning that you're still 3D form. You're still swimming in 3D consciousness. So be patient. Be patient with yourself and allow yourself to navigate it with the ego still if you need to, right? You don't want to just do these things that are going to make you more stressed out or uncomfortable. So navigate it, right? I don't do anything, even if my higher self says to do it, unless the third dimensional human aspect of me is ready. So what happens a lot of times is I knew back in December that I was going to move from the place I was living in around October. I just knew. I don't know how I knew, right? My higher self was just like, hey, just an FYI, PS, you're going to be moving around October. So I always knew that was coming. I always knew it was for my highest good. I didn't figure out when, how, why, where, what, right? I just knew. Again, higher self guiding me, and then me just waiting until I got the hit or the intuitive like, oh, it's time to do this, right? And then around August, I started having Wi-Fi issues. I started having mold issues, and I was watching like, oh, this is my guides being like, it's time to go, right? But I fought it for a little bit. My ego did, because it was uncomfortable. I didn't want to move. It felt annoying. You know, all these kind of ego parts of me were like, not yet, not yet, not yet. And I was still connected and listening to higher self though. Right? I didn't say to myself, oh, I better listen to my higher self because I'm supposed to be living in higher states of consciousness. And if I don't listen to my higher self, then I'm not doing the right thing. No. No. I am listening to my higher self, but I'm also having compassion for the fact that I'm a 3D form in 3D consciousness. And I'm going to give that just as much oomph as I do my higher self, right? So I'm going to wait until I'm feeling like, yeah, let's go. I'm going to jump in with you. So that's the ego and the higher self playing together, navigating this together, right? But I'm always recognizing that higher self is the navigator. That's my number one thing I'm listening to. It's just a matter of when. When. And it's not always... Again, it doesn't always feel safe, but there will be a knowingness within you that it's the right time, or I feel good about it now. I can do this now. Scared? Yes. Nervous? Yes. Unsure of how? Yes. But ready? Yes. And you feel that when you start becoming more and more energetic and aware of your energy, aware of your resonance, aware of your breath, aware of your present moment, aware of your multidimensionality, aware of your now, aware, observe, observe, observe. You're always being the observer. So again, you know, you're always going to, there's no such thing as the ego just going away. It's gone, right? It's going to be around. Now you learn to navigate with it. It's not a bad thing by any means. If you start to frame it like the ego is bad, then you're going to be held in duality, right? You want to look, because the higher self never looks at the ego as bad. Higher self just honors, acknowledges, and admires the ego's role in all of this. My God, if there was no ego, there would be mass chaos in the physical form. Okay? So it's a beautiful thing. It's got a beautiful job. It's got a beautiful role. And the way I navigate my nows when my ego is loud is I love it. Oh my God, thank you so much. I hear you. Listen, you can chill out now. Chill out. I hear you. I understand you've done this for, 44 years. Got it. Chill. Just please be quiet. Right? That's how I talk to my ego. I hear you. Thank you. Got it. I know what you're doing, but I don't need you right now. Constantly doing that. Constantly aware of the ego. Constantly listening to the ego. Not following it, but listening to it. So begin to listen to the voices in your head. Begin to listen to the intuitive knowingnesses within you. Get more and more clear. Get more and more clear. And don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. Okay? Because again, you're doing this. And eventually, you'll be anchored and aligned with higher self. So what's happening first is we're moving from 3 to 4. We're going to anchor into 4D. 4D is going to look like this. When the physical form is anchored into 4D, which means that it is holding 4D consciousness now. It's anchored into a 4D consciousness field. You're still going to be experiencing 3D consciousness, but you're going to be guided more and more by higher self. You're going to hear ego. You're going to be navigating the ego. You're going to be quieting the ego, but you're going to be following the navigation and guidance of higher self more and more and more as you continue to anchor deeper into 4D consciousness. And this is what's going to happen, right? The ego is going to get more, and this happens not only by the natural state of ascension, more energy coming into the body, more anchoring of that light, more understanding of this and doing this, but it's going to happen the more you are consciously engaged in playing with both of these aspects of you. So get conscious, engage, be aware, listen, feel, hear, and then know that this is happening. Okay, and there you go. There you go, there you go, there you go. All right, you guys, I love you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with me. And take care of yourself. Be very gentle. Start really navigating and being aware of those two aspects of you. And I'll talk to you next time. Lots of love.